everybody. Hello. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday as I'm recording this stream. It is I, Todd, aka Hex Press, here to continue my, I was going to try to think of a clever word. Well, my rulebook read-along of the One Ring 2nd Edition. I'm not reading everything at the moment. I'm being selective. Maybe that's what I should have said. Meant to say selective rulebook read-along. Hey, Now Nothing. Howdy, Now Nothing. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. So I'm being selective, and I'm always open to hear from you folks in the community. Let me know if you want to hear or see more different parts. But I thought the parts that intrigued me, at least initially, were the adventure phases that we looked at in the stream from yesterday that you can check out. And then the fellowship phases, which we are going to look at today. I don't have any programming notes, so I'm just going to hop right in it and take it from there. And I wish there was a way, I don't know, Adobe, I don't know if there's a way to hide all this stuff. Let's see. Maybe I can. Can I hide it? Now, could I hide the top? Not sure. I really like having the spread, but if I go to the full screen mode where I get the whole screen on there, I lose the spread. In this case, I get it, but then I think, one time I tried to take away these extra toolbars and I couldn't figure out how to get them back. Okay. Oops. Oh, it was F8. Ooh, all right. Getting there. We're getting there. I just got to remember F8 to try to get them back when I actually need to do something besides read a PDF. All right. Enough, Adobe. We are on, this is chapter 7 in the books. Hey, Tucker Todd. Be sure to critical hit that like button. Thanks so much, Tucker Todd. Yes, don't break your browsers with that critical hit, but sure, I will happily take a thumbs up if you enjoy this stuff. So this is chapter 7, Fellowship Phases. When winter first begins to bite and stones crack in the frosty night, when pools are black and trees are bare, it 'tis evil in the wild to fare. That's a quote, I believe, that comes up in the Councils of Elrond, I think. Bilbo throws that out there. One thing I noticed yesterday, and because I'm looking at the spreads, it's probably more apparent, though maybe it'd be about the same. I have not seen the print version. I think I kickstarted a print version. I haven't gotten it yet. Anyway, if I did, and I don't know where they are in their fulfillment, so I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But I'll just go ahead and say, as someone who is needing to wear glasses now for reading, this type is pretty darn small. But maybe if I was holding it, and I don't know the size of the book, maybe it would seem less small. But man, it looks kind of small here. I'm able to read it with the glasses, all right, but tough. Heroes are not always busy navigating deep caverns, fighting back the shadow, or fleeing from dangers beyond their ability to face. Even the most eager of adventurers need some time to rest, to gather their wits, and allow time for their hurts to mend. Whether the player heroes spend it in pursuit of a personal goal or simply resting comfortably to recover their energies before setting out on the road once again, the time between adventures is called the Fellowship Phase. So we're looking at downtime, basically. Everyone needs good downtime. I'm always interested in kind of downtime rules because, at least how they've been historically, games with downtime ends up being kind of a bit of just a cluster with no real structure to it. Which means both, it can be good sometimes, but it can also mean, I think, as a player, you may not take advantage of things the way you might want to, because you just don't have a structure for it. You can't look and think to yourself. Of course, you can always inquire of the GM, but just in terms of understanding the things you can do, because it's unstructured, you can kind of be caught with nothing. And as a GM, it can also be sometimes difficult to navigate what things they should be doing, what things maybe you should be doing. And I don't know if they're going to have here are some referee, or they call them lore master, things to do for downtime. But I think having that structure is good. And I've seen some different rules try to figure out. I think 5th edition, I think, has as well on some level kind of put here are things you can do in downtime, whether, the crafting or writing spells or doing research or other things. But I think it's good. I think having this stuff being that benefit of being player facing as opposed to just ask the GM is that if it's player facing and it's here, then you're not relying on somebody thinking enough to ask. They're going to see, oh, there is this thing, and now I can plan stuff to put in there, as opposed to this thing doesn't exist, and I have to be the one to think about, it does exist, and then what can happen, which can be, it can be a stretch. You're not always thinking about that stuff, and so you don't necessarily take advantage. And this gives you a space to do stuff that you may not want to clutter your sessions with role playing it all out. You can work it into some kind of downtime mechanical format. All right. Enough of that. Enough, Todd. Enough. Get back to the text. A fellowship phase is a gameplay instance driven by the player's choices. While during the adventuring phase, players react to the lore master's storytelling prompts. During a fellowship phase, they get to elaborate upon their player hero stories and ambitions and to mark their adventurer's progression. The lore master is invited to sit back and follow what the players have to say about their characters. Oh, so this is interesting. So it really is player-led. So during the adventuring phases, the lore master is in that active position, and the player heroes are reacting to that. For the most part, obviously, there's are some stuff that originate with the players, but maybe the rhythm is more the lore master is going to throw stuff out there, and the players are going to react to that. But in this phase, the players are in that active spot. And as the GM, the lore master, we're reacting to that stuff. So that's interesting. Players are encouraged to narrate in detail what they do during a fellowship phase, not necessarily limiting themselves to those activities with a direct gaming effect. For example, the adventurers might inquire about leads, problems, and opportunities that have arisen during the preceding adventuring phase. So that would seem to fall under the let's look for hooks for the next adventure. Leads, problems, and opportunities. When they do so, the players must always keep in mind the length of a fellowship phase and its geographical limits. Moreover, they must not introduce new background information, such as exploring a location their player hero has never visited before, making the acquaintance of personalities they haven't encountered yet, and so on. In short, they should not do what is better suited to an adventuring phase. All right. So the players, the adventurers, the player heroes, might inquire about leads, problems, and opportunities. I suppose, I guess that's one example. But whatever they're talking up, right, they're encouraged to narrate in detail what they're doing. But what they're doing, you have to keep in mind the limits of the time that they have, the geographic limits also. You can't add new stuff that hasn't been explored. You're not creating new fiction. And you can't be, let's see, so you're not creating new fiction, essentially, right? So that's either coming up with locations you haven't been to yet, giving yourself relationships to NPCs that you don't have yet, that sort of thing. This is where I love an example. Maybe we'll get one down the line. Because I wonder about when it says inquire about leads, problems, and opportunities. Is this to mean that the players are going to be presenting these? Like, oh, I talked to Barleyman Butterbur, and so lost their mules and out in the wilds outside Bree in the Barrow Downs, and that's our next thing to go and get them. Like, are they going that far, or do they put that question out there and then the lore master will fill it in? Because the first part says that the lore master is supposed to be reacting. Is them inquiring about leads, is that the extent of their action, and then we react to that with the leads? Or is this really supposed to feel like, no, you create the entire lead, you come up with the whole another problem, just keeping in mind the things that we just said? No, you can't. You got to keep in mind the geography, you got to keep in mind the time that's left, and whatever, right? So you can't be in Bree and say, oh, I'm just going to go run to Rivendell real quick and say hi to Master Elrond, whatever, if you don't have time to do that. And presumably that's probably outside, let's say, the Bree land area that you're kind of situated in. A fellowship phase marks the conclusion of each adventuring phase, and as such, ideally takes place at the end of a gaming session. Otherwise, they can open a new session and proceed the next adventuring phase. Okay. I mean, yes, that would seem ideal. Fellowship phase structure. All fellowship phases are structured as follows. 1. Set the duration. 2. Choose the destination. 3. Form updates. 4. Choose undertakings. Okay. Now we're getting into the meat of the matter. So we're going to set the duration. Fellowship phase usually covers a longer period of time than the average adventuring phase. Events are described in broader strokes. Days and weeks pass while the player heroes relax or busy themselves with their own personal work or studies. To give the player heroes a real break from active adventuring, a fellowship phase should last a minimum of 1 week up to an entire season. Right. So we're not talking in minutes and hours. We're talking really days, weeks, months, potentially. Downtime, right? That's kind of the downtime timescales. Normally, the longest fellowship phase is taken during the midwinter festivities. See Yule on page 120. All right, we'll get to Yule. Next, we choose a destination. So first, we'll choose a duration. Okay, we have X amount of weeks here in Bree, or we have to wait a month in Rivendell for X, Y, and Z, or it's winter and we just can't go out right now, so we're here for 3 weeks, whatever that is. Nothing says in the chat, I get you don't want the players making up a new NPC or location, but it seems like a big hit to realism if you can't meet new people during downtime. I'm not sure, nothing, that they're saying you can't meet new people during downtime. I think maybe more what it's saying is that the player cannot dictate that part. They can't just say, for example, if you were wintering in Minas Tirith, oh yeah, I ran into Denethor on the street the other day. Now we're best pals, and I'm living in the palace, and I'm hanging out with Faramir and Boromir, and we're best buds now, right? You can't do that. You might say as something, and I assuming we'll get into it more, maybe as an undertaking or something else. I want to try to get closer to Denethor, or maybe I want to get more connections with Denethor, and or something like that. And then maybe, or whatever it might be. Let's say I want to find information about what's happening in Osgiliath from people who are in Minas Tirith, and then maybe as a reaction to this action that you as a player here are taking, me as the lore master can say, oh, you run into this old warrior named such and such who was garrisoned at Osgiliath, and because he was injured or aged out of the army, and he can tell you some things, and this is a new context. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see more of it, but I'm not so sure they're saying, hey, you can't meet new people. I think they're saying that they're just putting limits on what, as a player, you can just riff off of and say everything that you've done. Or at least that's my take right now, but we shall see more as we get further in here, because maybe that is what they're saying. But not yet. Swig of water for the working man. Okay, so we've got the duration, X number of days or weeks or months, potentially. Next, we're going to choose a destination. Once the length of the fellowship phase has been determined, players must decide where they will spend it. Generally, the player heroes stop at a safe haven to spend the phase as a group, unless the end of the year's end festivities are near. I'm guessing that's a typo. I'm guessing they mean the year-end festivities are near. See, even all this beautiful layout and everything, and there's still those typos squeak their way in somehow. To keep the gameplay authentic, the player should choose a place within a reasonable distance from the area where the company was adventuring during the recent sessions of play. Also taking into consideration how long the fellowship phase will last. The players are free to select any location the company has visited so far. The journey required to reach the chosen destination is considered to take place behind the scenes, unless the players have a mind to play out the details. Places like the town of Bree or Rivendell are the ultimate safe havens, as they are particularly suited to resting and the mending of wounds, and are inhabited by a host willing to welcome travelers. So here's something interesting. I haven't played yet, and I would love to try to play. And if I were to try to play, I would probably just try to play it as written. However, I don't like the idea that you can just, we crossed Moria and we finished our mission in Lothlorien. Oh, we want to go back to Bree. All right, we'll just do that behind the scenes. I think that if your ultimate goal is getting back to Bree to recuperate, then that's part of the adventure. And then I would want to run that journey. I would want to do everything. That's really the end. So I would say no, at least for me, my first blush is no. You can't just say, oh, we just want to be here and we're going to do the behind the scenes. That's part of that adventure planning. And maybe it's just because I look at everything kind of in that sort of hex crawl nature, or like I feel like about dungeons and how no, it's not just get to the bottom of the dungeon and then magically teleport out, that there is that part of that real challenge is not only getting to the bottom of the dungeon, but getting back out again. By the same token, if you really need to end your adventure in a certain location, for example, you had to deliver something to Lothlorien, and then presumably now you want to talk to Elrond, then you got to factor that in. So I would not be inclined to just let you go, we're in Lothlorien, and now suddenly we're in Rivendell. But that's me. It is interesting, though, they kind of let you do that. That once you finish that sort of adventure, whatever it is, you can just kind of bounce without risk back to whichever your home area is. But I would be inclined to not do that. But that's just me. Terrence, hey Terrence. Terrence says, seems weird to have to point that stuff out. Must be hard targeting the never played an RPG before demo. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I think we can often forget as folks who may have been reading RPGs for tons and tons of time. What is it like for somebody who has never read an RPG? This might be their first, right? Somebody who's seen the movies recently, or they heard of the Amazon TV show, and maybe they just picked up the first books and they read it and they love it and they want to play it, and they have no idea what an RPG is. Someone's heard about that D&D stuff, and now they want to try it. They stumble across this book in Barnes and Nobles, or maybe they like board games and they finally cross over. Yeah, it is interesting, but we have to keep that in mind. It's not all written for veteran players and referees. This is written for someone who may very well be hitting this as their absolutely first role-playing game. So you pick your spot, set your duration, you choose I don't know why they call it destination, because it's not really the destination, it's your location, but whatever. So you pick the duration, or you set the duration. Might be up to the players, it might be seasonal, there might be meta plot considerations, but however, you figure out how long it is, figure out where it's taking place. Now we perform updates. The players may now spend their accumulated experience points to improve their player heroes' skills and combat proficiencies. All right. So your level up stuff. And training, players spend skill points to develop their player heroes' skill ratings, blah, blah, blah. All right, that's cool. I'm not going to go through the update stuff, just knowing that here, hey, you're leveling up. And essentially, I like the fact they've tied this to downtime. I know there's something to be said, so it's kind of cool and fun that you just level up in the dungeon, you can just keep rocking and rolling, and your guy just gets more powerful kind of on the spot. But I have to say, I don't know, just conceptually, I kind of like the fact that you get home, you finish your adventure, and then you go through training and whatever else, and then you level up. And I know a lot of people will say but I don't get it. You're practicing while you're doing stuff. Actually, I don't really agree with that. I think there's something you said, the concept of sleeping on it, the idea that you have to kind of marinate on what you're doing to get better. I mean, there's a reason why pro golfers or baseball players have batting coaches and swing coaches. Pitchers have pitching coaches. Everyone gets coached all the time. It isn't just, well, hey, you've been playing basketball or baseball or football since you were a little kid, so we don't need to teach you anymore. Just go out and play hoops and you'll just magically get better. It doesn't work like that. I mean, people will get worse. I mean, you will talk about in baseball, someone during a baseball season where they're playing 162 games, not all of them, right? They'll usually take breaks and whatnot, but a whole bunch of games over the summer, not to mention whatever practice they're doing. Players will pick up hitches in their swings. Pitchers their technique will kind of fall off or go down a little rabbit hole in which you need to correct. It's not just a case of, you just keep doing it and suddenly you get better. No, people will sometimes get worse to the fact that basketball players in the middle of the season will go like, I don't know, somehow something's gone wrong with my 3-point shot. I need to go back and get some serious coaching in there to fix it. I think there is something to, yes, you are taking all this real world stuff you're learning, but also this point of, okay, you have this real world on the job kind of doing it stuff. And then there's this other thing of now you have to take that and then you can help sort of refine that and really to get that next level, you need to kind of be able to sleep on it, kind of get it in your bones and have somebody come in and guide you. But again, that's just me. maybe that's my little rant on why I like training episodes. But in any case, I do like the fact that you have to, or they're saying, hey, you're going to level up, you're going to do it in the downtime. So we have training, which is about doing your skills. You can also upgrade your wisdom or valor. I'm not sure wisdom, I'm guessing what that is. Valor, I'm not sure. But you can also do that during the fellowship phase. You can also recover your spiritual juices. Get some hope back. Also do that. Let's see. So I'm kind of just sort of going over these in the basics. But just because I'm not interested at this moment in the specific attributes. Something we can come back to if we get dig into it. But just know that you can get back hope. You can upgrade some of your attributes along with your skills. Let's see. Choose undertakings. Undertakings are time-consuming endeavors that player heroes can accomplish exclusively during a lengthy stop like a fellowship phase. Players select a number of activities based on whether the fellowship phase is an ordinary one or if it's Yule, the end of a year. All right, so I kind of like the fact that we have a special holiday here, which I guess you can either do some things or you can't do some things. Let's see. Nothing says in the chat. Also, with physical things, the people that are the best in the world need someone who might not be as good as them to train them. A level 2 fighter could 100% train a level 8 fighter. Yeah, I mean, very often the pitching coach is not as great as the pitcher as somebody else, but they understand basics or the fundamentals of pitching, and so they can spot when somebody's, their arm motion is off, or they're not getting enough velocity, or they're not getting enough spin, or so I mean, often there's that, right? Someone who can teach you doesn't necessarily have to be the best in the world at it. There's something about them that allows them to analyze and help somebody else improve their skill, even though that person's actual skill is better. Absolutely. So we have Yule. Approximately once every 3 fellowship phases, winter comes, and with it the end of the current year. Normally, the company spends the entire cold season as a single prolonged fellowship phase. Life in the wild is unforgiving, and adventurers prefer to have a roof over their heads when the wind is howling and the land is buried in snow. In most cases, the company disbands temporarily on the occasion of the Yule festivities, as each player hero takes the chance to return home and enjoy some time among family and folk. 3 months are enough for any player hero to return home from any location other than the most remote. I will say I kind of like that. So you get to go home. Yule is your going home holiday. So if you're a dwarf, an elf, or a human, whatever you are, wherever your hometown is, you get to go back. And I will say, if I said before that, I feel like getting to your fellowship, your sort of resting spot should be part of the adventure. I do think this is cool that, hey, this once a year you can kind of make your way home. And it could be something nice. You could obviously have a lot of character moments there. So in that case, maybe I would say, yeah, for Yule, you can get back. Because that's something I would want to encourage. And maybe I would say that for whatever reason, maybe because it's a special time of year, Santa Claus keeps the roads open. So the forces of Mordor are held back by the wintry elves of the Arctic, whatever. The Valar keep Christmas safe for folks. I would do that. I kind of dig it. I don't kind of dig it. I do dig it. The passage of years. When Yule comes, it means that all player heroes have aged 1 year. Luckily, time does not only slay kings and ruin towns, but may bring wisdom. The time the player heroes spend without adventuring allows them to reflect on their experiences and possibly learn from their mistakes. During a Yule Fellowship phase, all player heroes earn a number of bonus skill points equal to their wits rating, and add this amount to the total they accumulated during the last adventuring phase. Then the lore master should take the chance offered by a Yule Fellowship phase to update the company on the changes that are taking place in the world and that their player heroes should know about. To this end, the lore master may use the information contained in the setting chapter to determine what news reaches the ears of the player heroes, tailoring the information based on the current circumstances and whereabouts of the company. Keeping the company up to date with important news is a way to insert background elements into the next adventuring phase. So this I have to say I like a lot. Tarrant says, depending on the book, Santa also gives out magic weapons. Absolutely. Anti-Krampus weapons. So a couple things here I like a lot. I like the idea that, hey, if you manage to make it through a year, then you're going to get wiser and you're going to be able to upgrade some skills. This is you in the maturation process. You get older, you get wiser. At least that's what we tell ourselves. These are the things that we hope are true about life, that the older we get, the wiser we get. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's what we'd like to think. I like that aspect. And I also like the aspect that, hey, you're going to go home, especially if you're traveling from somewhere to your home place, hanging out for a while, coming back. What are you going to do? You're going to get news of the world. So you can have this big kind of info dump about, hey, here's everything that went on while you guys were messing around in Eriador or wherever, where you guys were, delving in the mega dungeon, the Lonely Mountain. Here's what was happening in other parts of the world that you're aware of, right? You get to move all those clocks, your fronts, all those things forward. What was Sauron doing? What have the dwarves been doing in different parts of the world? What have the elves been doing? What have the humans been doing, et cetera, et cetera? The orcs, whatever, right? I like that. It gives you that chance to give a whole bunch of new background that can feed into your next adventures. So if you didn't get a chance for whatever reason, if your players, and I think the other thing I like about it is that the players don't have to lead that. You can just say, hey, over the 3 months that you spent during Yule, here's what you learned. And here's your handout, info dump, whatever. Because one thing that can happen, I'm sure as the GMs are well aware, we have information we want the party to have. They don't necessarily need it, but we'd like them to have it because we've written it up. Then nobody asked the question. You think for sure, when they get to town, of course they're going to ask about MacGuffin A because they've spent the last whatever about MacGuffin A, and then they go to town, they lose the thread, they don't end up asking about MacGuffin A, then they go about their way. And you think, well, I wrote a bunch of stuff on MacGuffin A that not going to get read. Well, here's a chance if MacGuffin A is something that's in the, it's not super secret, it's kind of out there, then you could say, hey, you guys didn't ask the question about MacGuffin A, but MacGuffin A is famous enough or well known enough that this stuff's out there anyway. So it gives you a chance to kind of catch up, make sure that at least that some of this information that you didn't get that they wrote up, you can kind of throw out there for them. Let's see. We have a little box text. Change useful items. In addition to the various endeavors they may achieve during each fellowship phase, the players are free to change the selection of their player heroes' useful items. Okay, I don't know what useful items are, but that's cool. So you can just kind of, I guess you can swap out your kit if you want. Fellowship phase undertakings. This section lists the various activities available to the company during a fellowship phase. The players select a different number of undertakings based on whether the fellowship phase is an ordinary one or if it's Yule, end of year. All right. During an ordinary fellowship phase, the company as a group chooses one single undertaking. During a Yule fellowship phase, each player chooses one undertaking instead. Finally, during each fellowship phase, ordinary or Yule, the company is entitled to choose one additional undertaking, selecting it among those that are listed as free based on the callings represented among the player heroes. I'm guessing callings maybe is a class? So basically, if you're on an ordinary fellowship phase, you're picking one thing as a group. During Yule, everyone is basically going to their own homes, so they get to do their own thing. And then you get one additional one from the ones that are free, which I'm guessing are going to be kind of more minor ones. I'm assuming free in time that they would take to do. To sum things up, during an ordinary fellowship phase, the company will choose a maximum of 2 undertakings and a number of undertakings equal to the player heroes plus 1 during Yule. Players must always select different undertakings unless they are marked as Yule activities. Such endeavors can be chosen by any number of player heroes. So you can't double up if you're doing it as a group. If you're on Yule, each one's doing their own, then you could do multiples of the same if you want to. And here are the undertakings. We have gather rumors, right? I think that makes sense. A rumor can be a story about an individual, a place, or a coming event, pointing specifically to something that the company can explore, prevent, or aspire to achieve. Otherwise, a rumor can be something specific that the player hero is inquiring about and directly related to the current adventuring circumstances of the company. Company, including a warden, can choose this activity as a free undertaking. All right, so it seems like some of these as free are going to be tied to specific classes. I think that's what I had guessed. So it doesn't look like, so it looks like you are the undertaking of gathering rumors. The players are going to, I think going back to that original concept, I think the players aren't going to be describing the whole rumors from finding it to describing what it is. They're going to take that as an undertaking, then I guess as the lore master, which would make sense, right? That we would come up with the rumors. It was a little bit unclear from the way they posed it earlier, but that seems to be how it's intended. Heal scars. This is a Yule activity. Heroes feel the burden of the shadow weigh heavily upon their shoulders long after adventures are over. Their minds remain bent on dark thoughts, and visions haunt them in their dreams. If not even during their waking hours, only the passage of time can heal such wounds. Choose this undertaking to focus on mending your spiritual injuries. Spend 5 adventure points and remove 1 shadow scar. All right, we don't know shadow scars yet, but that seems very cool. It does have a cost, so you don't get to just do it for free, but you can do it. I'm not sure what a shadow scar is, but presumably it has some enduring negative effects. Otherwise, that would feel rough to have to spend adventure points to get rid of it. But I'm guessing that it does. Player heroes from different cultures resort to different methods to get rid of their scars. Dwarves often turn to the forge to burn out their frustration, smiting the red iron on the anvil. Hobbits dedicate themselves to a beloved activity like gardening or painting, and elves and men generally create, play, or recite poems and songs. You can also meet a patron. After a few years of adventuring, the company will probably count several of the wise and great among their allies. Some of these can be chosen as patrons of the company. Cover it somewhere else. Choose this undertaking to meet one of the company's friends and allies when spending the fellowship phase in a location where that individual can be found, and if the patron is available for a meeting. When this is the case, the lore master can work with the player hero to set up the encounter. The reasons to see a patron vary based on the current circumstances of a campaign. But generally revolve around the player hero asking for some sort of assistance, possibly accepting a task requested by the patron in return. The description of various personalities are given elsewhere. Okay, and they have kind of directions on how to handle them specifically. Company, including a messenger, can choose this activity for free. All right. So you can, if you have a patron, you can meet him. You can ponder storied and figured maps. A player or hero choosing this undertaking studies every map and scroll of lore they can find to learn as much as possible about the perils the company may face while on a journey. Until the next fellowship phase, apply a modifier of +1 to all feat die rolls made to determine the nature of events during the event resolution step of a journey. So that's a cool one. It's cool, and it's part of that abstracted travel. So we're not doing a thing where a player, in let's say in my OSR game, right? A player might say, "Oh, I want to go study the maps," and you might be expecting for me to hand over some map images or maybe update their map or something else. We're not worrying about this, right? And these ponder, story, and figured maps is really an abstraction of the whole process, to the point that I'm not giving them a new map. They're not getting any new extra information in that regard. But what they are doing is getting a leg up on that part of that journey when they're figuring out the what events are happening. And that plus is gonna move them, shift the results closer to the positive ones and away from the negative ones. So that is cool. Oh, you can raise an heir. When adventurers sooner or later realize that all they have done in their lives can avail to nothing if they meet an untimely end, to avoid squandering their legacy, they should spend some money and time choosing and raising a worthy successor. Choose this undertaking to spend up to 5 treasure and an equal number of adventure points to add to your heir's starting previous experience reserve. For each adventure point spent, raise the reserve by 1. Oh, so this is interesting. So it's essentially you're getting here. And this is a Yuletime activity where you're prepping your background character, your backup character. But I think that's very cool. If this is the first time that this undertaking has been chosen, the player must choose a name for the designated heir, writing it down on the character sheet. What's interesting about it is we really are playing with years. So how fast are these? Because if you say, "Oh, I'm raising an heir," is this to presume that you birthed an heir some years prior, or is this the birthing of an heir? I don't know. Interesting. Because it's kind of like, well, if you're going to do it this way, then we have to make it through 18 or 15 or 16 Yules before they're kind of ready to go. I'm not sure how that would work, but I really like the concept. And especially if folks want to have some kind of dynastic game, that's a good way to mechanize things. Recount a story, also a Yule time activity. Adventures have meaning for those who live them, but they can become cautionary tales for others. Player heroes give a personal account of an event they took part in, describing the episode to members of their own folk in a public place or event, or recording it in a book. Players are encouraged to improvise a short narration. Choose this undertaking to replace one of your distinctive features with a new trait, choosing a quality that you displayed in the narrated episode. So you can kind of do a little character adjustment. Bob Mosdell says, Bilbo picked Frodo. Yes, indeed. And I probably failed to pick up on that yes, you could pick up you could choose a relation to become your heir as opposed to birthing your own heir. This is true. Very, very true. All right, so you can tell a story and choose a new trait from your distinctive features. We haven't covered that, but that's kind of a cool way to sort of reset a little bit, or at least one thing about your character if you feel like something has changed. You can strengthen the fellowship. The bond shared by the members of a company is put to the test by the odds they face in the course of their adventures, and can be reinforced when the player heroes are enjoying a moment of respite. Chooses undertaking to raise the fellowship rating by +1 until the next fellowship phase. Company, including a captain, can choose this activity as a free undertaking. Yeah, I don't know what the fellowship rating is, but I think it's cool. You could do it, and it's also temporary. You have to only lasts until the next fellowship phase. So I wonder if there are ways to permanently upgrade it. I'm not sure. I'd have to maybe if that'll be something else I can look at some point. Study magical items. When heroes come into possession of a strange ring, an ancient jewel, or a rune-scored staff, they might not know much about their properties, especially if they are not immediately observable. Chooses undertaking to learn all there is to be discovered about the qualities of all marvelous artifacts and wondrous items in the company's possession. So, right, this is your identifying. I kind of like that it's part of downtime too. You're going to find this stuff, but you really can't figure it out until you spend downtime. And the other thing I like about this is, hey, you're limited, right? All these things sound great, but you can only pick 2, except for Yule, in which case everyone can pick one, and then there's one group one. So you don't have, you might, or rather, you don't have the freedom to just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna let's do them all. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." No, you're gonna pick one, or the group actually. As I suppose, as a group, you're gonna pick 2 together. And again, on Yule, you can pick your own. That really means that it's gonna take a while for different things, and players are gonna have to choose what is the best suited for what they're doing, or what they think they're going to do in the immediate future after this fellowship phase. Whatever the next adventure is, whatever the next thing is. I like that a lot. I like that there's a lot of these choices. You're only going to have 2. So which 2 do you want? You're probably not going to be able to get everything that you want. You're going to have to prioritize. And I have to say, I like that. Bob Mossel also says, okay, Lore Master, you've got to start prepping your Silmarillion. Oh boy. Yeah. Thousands of years. We'll start with the 2 trees, or we'll start with the 2 lights, or whatever, the 2, yeah. Or we'll just start in the darkness and the void when the song first began. Yeah, that would be a lot. Write a song. All cultures of Middle-earth play and sing songs to remember things that are fair and to celebrate life. Choose this undertaking to compose a song, choosing whether it will be a lay, a song of victory, or a walking song. Very flavorful from the works. The new composition is added to a company's list of songs. That list is used to keep track of which songs are available to the company to sing during an adventuring phase. I missed that. I missed singing songs. I think. I like that a lot. What does it do? The player is encouraged to come up with a song title or its lyrics. For example, taking inspiration from events that occurred to the company, focusing on one or more player heroes. Champions can do that for free. Interesting. I guess I missed singing songs, or my memory is really bad and I don't recall it. So basically, the three types of songs are: a lay is basically a council about narrating heroic deeds and meant to be recited or sung at gatherings. You have songs of victory that are combat songs, and then you have walking songs for journeying. I guess I must have missed singing songs in the adventuring phases. There is a box text about it. Singing songs. When the company is involved in a council, combat, or journey, the player heroes may sing a song and rouse themselves to pursue their goal with renewed strength of purpose. To do so, first choose a song from among those on the company's song list that is appropriate to the current adventure, combat, journey, or council. Then make a song roll. Heroes succeeding in the roll ignore the effects of being weary for the length of the heroic venture. Singing a song in combat is considered a secondary option. That's very cool. So I was not giving you a bunch of bonuses, but I presume that the weariness are some negative modifiers that you can, for a time, ignore. But I like that. It reinforces themes from the books because they did sing songs and have that kind of thing. And I dig it. And it is player led. No one's forced them to do it, but if they decide to do it, there is a mechanical benefit for doing so. Tonka Todd says, songs like those sung by Sir Robin's minstrels and Monty Python? I suppose it could. Sure. It's all about Sir Robin running away. Absolutely. Why not? I'd let them have it. If that's what gives them inspiration, sure. Oh, that's it. Ba, ba, ba. All right. Look at that. Actually, wow, I feel like I'm ahead of the curve. I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. Should we dip into? I'm just going to flip through some pages here. So I guess, well, actually, before I do that, so what are we thinking about this downtime phases? I'm digging them. I like the selection of downtime things that you can do. I think you could probably expand on these or do more of them depending on what your game was like. Remember, again, as I said yesterday, I'm usually looking for things that I can take out and put into my own game if I don't plan on running this game directly. And certainly the kind of structures for these fellowship phases are things I like. Terrence says, I totally give bonus points if a player wrote a song. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would throw a little extra bones if they could actually write a song or even just parody an existing song. If they could Weird Al some kind of song that they like and make it reflect the things that they've done, I would totally do that. And I like the fact that you kind of have this songbook. That kind of material is nice. You could end up with playing this game having these adventure logs and a songbook, and those things are kind of cool. And I could definitely see groups do all kinds of fun stuff at the end of campaigns where I could just imagine here you have all this material. If you wanted to do something fun, like print out a book of the so-and-so groups, right? The Fellowship's songbook and the Fellowship's Tales of Adventures. You could do all that. You have all this neat materials that you've come up with for your game, which I think is really fascinating. And I think it's mechanized in a pretty neat and fair way. And like I said, it's not mandated. They don't have to create songs and do that. But if they do participate in that downtime activity, then they do get something out of it. And I think it's a fair something because what they're saying is by telling these songs, it helps keep your heart light. It keeps the weariness at bay, which I think I keep mentioning is, I think, thematic. It fits with the tone and everything from the books. To me, it's fair. It's sometimes you see stuff and they want to encourage players to do it, but then they decide to give kind of at least sometimes I'll read it as kind of outrageous bonuses. You sing the song and now you're +8 to do this and you're +12 to do that and you're like crazy, and it's not like that, but I think it's significant enough to make it worthwhile. And like I said, I like the fact that there's a bunch of options you have, but you only can do a couple of them, so you're gonna have to choose. You're gonna have to pick what is important or what you think is important. That kind of little game of kind of like memorizing spells is in OSR, like D&D, where as a wizard, you got to think about what am I going to use today. And so when you pick well, you feel amazing. When you pick poorly, you go, "Ooh, I should have done this other one." And I can see the same thing for these. You run into a lot of hiccups on the journey. You're probably gonna think, "Oh, why didn't I do that ponder story and figure? Why didn't I ponder the maps? Instead, I did something else. We didn't need so much." Then next time, maybe you choose the inverse, and then something else happens. You think, "Oh, why didn't we write a song to help us out? We could have used it." That kind of thing. No, nothing says this game seems to do a great job of gamifying Tolkien's style of storytelling. That is certainly, yes, I would agree with that, at least as far as how it seems reading it. It does seem to have done an excellent job of gamifying kind of Tolkien concepts and things like that. Absolutely. I think you know what? Actually, I want to go look at. Someone mentioned in a comment yesterday. I think either Hope and Dread. I'm just gonna zip. No, 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 no. I probably should just. This is what happened. I closed all the tabs. All right. Can I get to a? Okay. So here's the curiosity. When I get to the table of contents, is it going to be linkable or is it going to have links? Oh, this is quite a table of contents. All right. I want to look at the Hope and Dread. Here we go. Hope, or in maybe Endurance and Hope. Let's take a look at that. Call it a little bit of an extra while we have some time. Let's see, Tunkatod says, they can have some cool and interesting stuff when in either downtime, adventuring, or during fellowship. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you like Tolkien style fantasy, which I'm a big fan of, and you want to play in something like that, and you're not, and you want to do it in this system as opposed to doing it in whatever your group plays normally, I think there's a lot to be commended about this. It obviously has its own, as nothing mentioned, I think also in a comment in yesterday's stream, I think also on a comment to the video itself, that it may not be the way you normally do things. It may be different than, for my example, like OSR gaming, but if you can be open-minded and you can find a way to make it work, then yeah, I think there's a lot to appreciate about how they're doing what they're doing. But again, this is all from reading it. So maybe I would play it and try to run it and it wouldn't grok for me, but I'm totally digging it right now. All right, so we have, and I've moved over to Endurance and Hope. Endurance and Hope are what keep adventurers on the road, providing them with reserves of energy and with the additional momentum that sometimes is the only chance a hero has to prevail. Both ratings are calculated during character creation and are based on a hero's culture of origin and on their strength and heart stats. The resulting values are maximum scores. During play, heroes lose endurance points as the result of exertion and of suffering harm, and they spend hope voluntarily when they must succeed against difficult odds. All right, so endurance points are something that you lose, and hope is a currency that you spend. Reminds me of, I guess, luck in something like Call of Cthulhu. Players record their maximum endurance and hope values on their character sheet using the boxes found under their corresponding stats, while they use the current endurance and hope boxes to keep track of any changes that occur during play. So endurance represents a player hero's resistance and is taken into account whenever an adventurer is subjected to some form of harm. In particular, player heroes lose endurance during combat when they suffer physical damage from any other source, or as a consequence of any strenuous task requiring great effort. Player heroes whose endurance is reduced to 0 drop unconscious and wake up after 1 hour with 1 endurance point, unless they are also wounded, which is covered down the line. Weary. So we saw weary pop up in the downtime. Weary used in conjunction with the hero's carried load is in used. Oh, okay. Weary just used in conjunction with the hero's carried load. Endurance determines when the weight and bulk of any equipment starts to affect a player hero's performance. Okay, but they're not saying what weariness does, but it's there. Now, nothing says, yeah, the One Ring seems to be all about playing a particular kind of game, much more so than D&D. But that's not a criticism when the game is clear what it is trying to do. Right, so the One Ring isn't trying to be your, hey, we're fantasy for every kind of fantasy you want, right? We understand we're coming to the One Ring. We're specifically looking to play a Tolkien fantasy style game. Now, there are a number, probably endless ways you could do that. Here is their opinionated way on how to get there. So it can be opinionated because they have a particular goal and they're going towards it. Something like D&D is trying to be everybody's fantasy for all things, which forces them to mostly eschew any kind of opinionation for the most part. So we covered endurance, we got weariness, fatigue. Traveling causes the player heroes to accumulate fatigue points, representing a form of exhaustion caused by protracted loss of sleep and the general discomfort of spending days in the open. Fatigue enters play exclusively in conjunction with the rules for journeying. Right, we saw fatigue in the other stream. When gained, fatigue points temporarily raise a traveling player hero's total load, effectively making it easier to become weary. Aha, so you get kind of you're carrying some amount of load, then you start to gain fatigue and all this stuff with weariness, and then it kind of forms this cycle that you have to try to break out of at certain points to get some back. Heroes become weary if their current endurance score becomes equal to or lower than their total load. When this happens, the weary box on their character sheet is checked. Player heroes remain weary until their endurance score rises above their load again. So weariness ultimately is just an on or off. You're either weary or you're not weary. There's no shades of weariness. Resting. Player heroes regain lost endurance points by resting. The extent of the player hero's recovery depends on whether they take a short rest or a prolonged one. Short rest. Under most circumstances, a day of adventuring allows for a maximum of one short rest, usually in the middle of the day. If precise timing is needed, a short rest may be said to correspond to at least 1 hour of inactivity. With a short rest, adventurers recover a number of lost endurance points equal to their strength rating. Wounded, you don't get anything. One thing that's interesting here is a lot of stuff seems to come back to your attributes, which seem to be fairly important. A lot of stuff is based on, okay, your maximum load is this, this is that. So that's something, I mean, I guess if you're coming from something like 5th edition, that's probably not a bad thing, or that you just think that's naturally. One of the things I like about OSR is the fact that a lot of stuff isn't tied to your attributes, so you don't feel like you're completely screwed if you don't have excellent attributes. I don't know. I didn't look at how that you're rolling these or how they're determining them. So maybe it's some kind of array or something else, but it does feel like if you have low attributes, you could be hit in a lot of different areas. Linkian, hey Linkian. Linkian says, these very procedural rules for downtime are great since these are kinds of activities I want to see players take part in BX/5e D&D games, but struggle to get them to participate in. Maybe they really just have more fun kicking indoors and killing monsters. Absolutely. But I think, like I said before, I think one thing that can be helpful is that when you're in a dungeon, generally, you kind of have a good idea of the things that you can do. When you're kind of in town, you might not. And some players are going to be really great at thinking up, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do that. Other players, they're not going to think that, or they're not going to appreciate the possibilities they have, or they're not really in tune with the kind of tropes to ask about such things. In those cases, having a list of saying, here are the things you can do might just be eye-opening for them. You might find players that had no idea what to do in downtime. Then they'll see this list, and particularly a list that has mechanical benefits. Like, oh, really? If I go and I do this is going to help in the next adventure. Oh, really? All right, let me go do that. As opposed to, I'm just going to sit in the tavern. So I think that that concept of not only mechanizing it, but making it player facing and open might help engage players in that activity when it's just kind of opaque and you're just kind of doing it, some players, frankly, aren't going to have anything to do, really. If you're the fighter type, if you're the wizard and you have downtime, you're like, ooh, I want to make potions, or I want to make more spells, or I'm going to go try to do this or that. Great, I go off. Then you go the fighter, what do you want to do? And the fighter's like, I don't have any things to memorize. I've sharpened all my swords already. Like, what do I have to do? If you give them a list of, well, here are these things you could do that could help you or help the party, they might really get into doing it. And they might have fun thinking about what they want to prioritize. They just didn't know about it before. And their characters didn't lend themselves to having kind of a built-in downtime. Some characters are going to have sort of obvious things to do during downtime, and other characters might not. And giving those other characters kind of a list of, but here's other stuff you can do. Sure, you're not the thief, so you're not interested in making contact with a local thieves guild, but here are these other things you can do. It might get them interested. And then nothing says, that's funny. I have trouble pulling my players out of the downtime. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of, your miles may vary in terms of your table, your players, whatever. But I will say that I think the more you could put things in front of them and it's facing and they understand it and it's mechanized in the sense that they can get what's positive about it is going to be very clear to them, as opposed to it being really opaque. I think that might help get them into it. If nothing else, the fact signing these as a team can be a benefit. Then you don't have to worry about each person doing things. You can just think of, okay, as a group, you chose these two things. It can be fast. If you want to do it in a slower way, obviously a more detailed way, you can. Linkian says, player swap. It reminds me of those old Monty Python skits about the wife swapping. Yeah, player swapping. Heck, in the digital age, you probably could swap players. That'd be kind of fun, actually. All right, so we got a short rest. We have prolonged rest. So I covered short rest. Prolonged rest, I think we get that. Now we get hope, which is really kind of what I was interested in. Hope is a hero's reserve of spiritual fortitude and positivity. A hopeful character can keep going when physically stronger heroes have already succumbed to despair. During play, players can spend hope to gain a hope bonus on any die roll or to trigger the effects of certain cultural virtues. Player heroes whose hope score is reduced to 0 are spiritually drained. It is impossible for them to find the energy required to push themselves beyond their limits. And then we have miserable. In the course of the game, player heroes face threats capable of shaking their determination and will to fight. As a consequence, they accumulate shadow points. Heroes become miserable when their shadow score matches or overcomes their current hope. So this is interesting because hope is something you spend. Then I presume you are taking on shadow at different aspects. So you're going to have this little balance of, I could spend hope to try to make this roll, but if I do that, it's pulling me closer to that shadow score and closer to making me miserable. When this happens, check the miserable box on the character sheet. A player hero remains miserable until their hope rating surpasses their shadow score again, either because they regain hope or because they find a way to get rid of shadow. I'd probably like to look at shadow too at some point. We can recover hope. We already saw that in the fellowship phase. You can spend, you can spend the fellowship phase. You can spend you can spend fellowship points. During the adventuring phase, whenever the company is resting, the player heroes may spend any number of fellowship points to distribute an equal number of hope points among the player heroes. So that's something you can do with those. We talked in downtime about gaining a temporary fellowship point. Here's how you can spend them. Taking a break from adventuring, so you get some back during that fellowship phase just from resting. And then you can take a prolonged rest. If you're down to 0 hope, you can get 1 hope back. And then we have serious injuries. A little box text. Endurance loss should not be confused with being wounded. While being hit in combat results in a loss of endurance, adventurers are only at risk of death when hit by a piercing blow, a precise attack that threatens to bypass their armor and defenses completely and cause serious injury. And then there's combat rules for that. Let's see what else is. And then that's it. That's it for that. I do want to take a quick look. Oh, I'm so close. Let me see how long the bit on the shadow is, because I really am interested in that too. Can I get there? Let's see. We're talking 136. What happened? Come on. 136. How long is this shadow section? Ooh, sorcery, madness. Oh man, can I get there? All right, I'm going to try to be, even though it's the hour, I'm going to try to squeeze this in here. This is the shadow. And that is another reason why the ring should be destroyed. As long as it is in the world, it will be danger even to the wise, for nothing is evil in the beginning. All right, I'm going to skip through the flavor text. The presence of the enemy weighs upon the hearts of the most inhabitants of Middle-earth. And we're showing this weight by using shadow points. Challenging an almost all-powerful enemy and facing its terrible minions is bound to instill a sense of fear and doubt in the player heroes, sentiment that in time comes to weigh heavily on their hearts and minds. In the game, this burden is represented by the accumulation of shadow points and by the sources that force their gain. In the course of play, these player heroes see their shadow score ebb and flow as they gain points during the adventuring phase. That's a consequence of their actions, and then they possibly lose them by making a shadow test, by strengthening their resolve, or by mending their spiritual hurt during a fellowship phase. All right, I really like this idea of shadow. Terrence says, the shadow! Yep, look out for the shadow! Shadow tests. A number of sources of shadow allow players to make a roll to cancel or at least reduce the amount of points gained, called shadow tests. These rolls are based. All right, so I'm actually not real. I don't really, not that I don't care, but I'm going to kind of go over the specifics of the rolling. I'm more interested in what the shadow test represents. So it's basically, you could pick up shadow, you can roll a test if it's presumably to negate that, to negate it or reduce how much shadow you would gain. I don't think they've said yet, unless I just totally scrolled past it, what kind of things will give you shadow, but I'm not sure. The sources of shadow that can be resisted with a test are described later in this chapter. Okay, so those are dread, greed, and sorcery. The consequences of shadow. A creeping threat, shadow becomes truly dangerous when the number of points accumulated by a player hero matches or overcomes their current hope score, i.e., they become miserable. When this happens, player heroes become miserable and see all their rolls hampered by the fact that rolling an eye icon on the feat die results in a failure, regardless of the target number and the actual result obtained by the roll. So I'm not sure about how that eye die comes in, but obviously it's another point. You gain an additional point of failure. But player heroes suffer even more serious consequences if their shadow gain is left unchecked. Player heroes whose shadow score reaches their maximum hope rating are so overburdened by their failures that they become ill-favored on all rolls. I guess that's getting disadvantage or something similar. There's only one way to recover from such depths of desperation. The player hero must experience a bout of madness. I'm all about bouts of madness. A bout of madness is a violent outburst, a dangerous crisis that frees the player hero from the burden of the shadow, but that may have serious long-term consequences, and we'll see that later. All right, so there's potential madness. Tonka Todd says, test because only the shadow knows. That's right, only the shadow knows. Harden will. Adventurers who are struggling under the burden of the shadow may tap into their innermost reserves of spiritual energy to harden their determination before it's too late. For some, this effort takes the form of a demonstration of desperate strength. Others enjoy a moment of clarity in their darkest moment when all seems lost and suddenly all doubts are cast away. In game terms, player heroes whose accumulated shadow does not yet match their maximum hope score may choose to remove all their current shadow, replacing it with a single shadow scar. Okay, so we saw the shadow scar referenced in the downtime. A shadow scar is a permanent shadow point that can be removed only during a Yule Fellowship phase by choosing the Heal Scars Undertaking, but is otherwise considered as a normal shadow point for all purposes. That's interesting. So before it gets too much, you can say, you know what, I'm just going to take a permanent shadow point. That's kind of cool. I was kind of, whoops. What the heck? I wasn't trying to do that. Thank you. Oh, Acrobat. All right, so I'm going to quickly breeze through these sources of shadow so I don't take too long. Bob Monson says, hello, Denethor. Yep. Bob also says, design The Shadow, a noir RPG, and take my money. Very good. A noir RPG might be interesting. It's just so hard to nail noir, and I'm not even sure. You'd have to really kind of change, I think, some of the noir stuff. I don't know. But yeah, noir RPG would be amazing if you could really, really get into it. All right, so we have some sources of shadow. We have dread. Terror is a spear in the hand of the enemy. And I'm just gonna. There's some said some tables, but I didn't see it. Oh, that's because I wasn't looking in the wrong place. So we have some sources of dread: natural but unexpected tragic event or very grievous occurrence. That might be a serious or mortal accident, death in the family, natural catastrophe, and you're going to gain 1 shadow point. A gruesome killing, a dreadful experience, orc work. Example might be discovering villagers savagely mutilated, experiencing slavery, 2 points. Harrowing experience, physical and spiritual torment, such as experiencing torture, being haunted by a wight, that's 3 points. And then experiencing directly the power of the enemy, seeing the mustering of a shadow army, seeing the eye in a palantir, 4 points. Now, quickly, we have greed, aka, what do they call it? Dragon sickness. When a player or heroes find a hoard of treasure, they may gain a number of shadow points if the hoard was tainted. Also, a callback to not only The Hobbit, but also the Barrow Downs, in which Tom Bombadil had to expose the treasure to the sun to kind of untaint it. They had to sort of sun cleanse the Barrow treasure. We have misdeeds. Companions often confront challenges that are so demanding that they might be tempted to adopt extreme measures, especially if they aim to achieve a noble goal. When this happens, the lore master must consider if a course of action can be considered a misdeed. This is a great way if you wanted to look at something, alignment or code of conduct, right? Oh, we're going to torture someone to get information. Misdeed. All right, what is it? They have a box text on intention. It's important to note that merely attempting to do something despicable is a misdeed, regardless of whether the action succeeds or not. Moreover, it is possible to commit a misdeed unknowingly. For example, attacking someone considered to be guilty of a heinous crime, but who later turns out to be innocent. I think that's important. It's not about the why, and it's not about the success. It's about what you choose to do. You choose to, in my book anyway, torture somebody, whether it's for a good cause, whether it even has a good result. That still would qualify as a misdeed. That's not, the result is not the point. And we have some example misdeeds: violent threats and malicious lies, heedless cruelty, 1 shadow point; manipulating others, abusing your authority, deliberate cruelty, 2 shadow points; theft or plunder, oath breaking or cowardice, treachery, 3 shadow points; torment or torture, killing or crippling a surrendered foe or harmless folk, 4 shadow points; and then murder, willingly taking actions in the service of the enemy, 4 plus 1 shadow scar. Bam. So 5, with one of those being permanent, or 4 plus the permanent 1. So 5 total, but 1's not going away for a while. And then we have sorcery. It is said that those who are in favor of the Dark Lord are often rewarded with evil knowledge. Some are able to wield such knowledge to terrible effect, twisting it into a form of dark magic. Adventurers gain shadow when they fall victim of the dreadful spells of the enemy and his minions. Adventurers may reduce or cancel the effects of sorcery with a shadow test. So basically, you get spells cast upon you, and then madness. Player heroes whose shadow score reaches their maximum hope rating become ill-favored, right, until they choose madness. So here are the bouts of madness. Betrayal. Betrayal is pretty obvious. Fear. The heroes fall prey to their fears and flee from any source of danger, thinking only about preserving themselves from any threat. Lust. Lusting characters feel an irresistible desire for an object not belonging to them and try to take it secretly or overtly. And then rage. Raging characters brood over real or imaginary wrongs, so they react aggressively to a perceived threat or source of opposition. And then you can kind of pick something else if nothing seems to fit, but this is very much in the vein of, we've seen it in Lord of the Rings. I think we could look at what Boromir does as being that kind of madness of rage. Denethor certainly, I think, maybe has similar, though maybe you might think of it as in a different context. Thorin Oakenshield, Probably lust might be one. So cool stuff there. And we've got shadow paths. In addition to resetting their shadow score, every time a hero suffers a bout of madness, they advance along the shadow path corresponding to their chosen calling. All paths are articulated along a number of steps towards degeneration, with each step marked by the acquisition of a different flaw, a distinctive feature with a negative connotation. Player hero's calling determines which flaws are acquired based on the character's shadow path. This is interesting. So we've got Curse of Vengeance, Dragon Sickness, Lure of Power, Lure of Secrets, Path of Despair, Wandering Madness, and each one has a number of distinctive, what do they call it? Distinctive traits that you can pick up. And then finally, you can just succumb to the shadow, become lost to madness. If you're an elf, you can return to Valinor. We have a box text on flawed heroes. Flawed adventurers haven't lost the possibility of being heroes. Many of the characters described in the books display the influence of the shadow to some measure. Certainly Boromir or Frodo, but also Aragorn and even Gandalf. In most cases, they're able to keep their weaknesses in check, avoiding corruption's most dire consequences. Every time heroes develop a flaw, they are renouncing their higher ambitions and embracing simpler, more primitive emotions. They are trading respect for arrogance, love for lust, trust for suspicion. The lore master should take into account the effects of a flaw whenever the performance of a player hero can be made worse by it. If a player hero is using a skill that can plausibly be affected by a flaw, the role is made ill-favored. All right, that makes sense. And then we have a list of these different, basically adjectives. I'm not going to read through all the descriptions. I think we'll get the point. We have, spiteful, brutal, cruel, murderous, grasping, mistrustful, deceitful, thieving, etc. It is a little bit of something that as the lore master, you'll have to keep track of, because it seems like it really is up to you as the lore master to say, Thorin, you've got the lust, and you're looking at Bilbo holding up the Arkenstone, so you're trying to do something, you're going to have to roll against it. I kind of like systems and I've toyed with this myself, not necessarily to any success, where I try to make it a player thing of, hey, if you engage with your flaw, then you get something out of it mechanically, maybe down the line, something you can use as a way of having them kind of self-fulfill it. And some folks, obviously, depending on your players, are going to just get in with their flaws and really feel it. And I think other players are going to be more gamish about it and say, I don't want to lose the role, so I don't want to mention my flaw. Just different ways of playing. But I really like the concept. I like flaws and all kinds of stuff. I think everybody should have flaws. Everybody should be flawed. All right, and that's it on that part. And then we'll get into adversaries, which I won't get into today. Any last thoughts before I call it a stream? I really like this stuff, and I'm glad I got a chance to look at Shadow and Hope, and what did we just look at? Spare, just the Shadow, I guess. Very good stuff. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you'd be interested in me looking at other parts of the book. I just kind of cherry-picked some sections I thought were interesting. If it seems like folks would be interested in seeing some of the other core mechanics or stuff like combat or things like that, or more on adversaries and whatnot, I'm happy to take a look at it. I don't have anything else for now, so give a thumbs up on your way out if you don't mind. If you're in here and you're not subscribed, throw me a subscription. I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later.